We are coming at you live from the International Space Station. This is Inverted World Live. Well, hopefully we're being beamed properly into your phones and computers from fake space. We are here today. It's been 2 weeks since I've been in the studio because I have a new child, and it's been amazing. But I'm sleepless, and it's been great. I'm joined by Alex. Alex, what? Everything's been going fine, right?
Everything's great.
Everything's great.
It's good to see
Someone did open the demon door downstairs, and I will have to leave the sign. Someone took down the sign I left last time I was here. I said, don't open the demon door. I don't know who walked here and opened it. There is a Cybertruck outside, so that's one clue.
Yeah, right.
Who opened the demon door? I'm joined today by two of my favorite people. They have a show called Nephilim Death Squad. They're amazing. Their show is amazing. I love talking to them. Let's bring them in. Are they here?
Hey guys, are you with us?
We got Raven. We got Top Lobster. How are you guys?
We are here. We are good. I did notice that you guys had the demon door issue. The reason we were late actually is because in order to shut the demon door, there had to be a quick ritual performed. A little bit of the blood of a chicken and things of that nature. But it's under control now, and that's good.
I'm sorry you guys had to see that. We had Carter come in. He has all the chickens from Chicken City. That's what they're really there for. Tim bought all the chickens for me to sacrifice at the door because I got to keep it in there somehow.
A lot of Tim's success. It's mostly chicken ritual, and the rest is podcasting. It's nice to be with you again, Shane. I didn't realize you were such a liar. The last time we talked, he's like, these guys are great and they have a really good show. None of it's good, none of it's great, but I'm happy that we're here, man. It's been a while.
Yeah. You know, I had to.
Did you know, Shane, that you're actually one of our favorite people too? Oh. We tell people that all the time, except when we say it, it's true.
I appreciate that. I love doing you guys' show. Last time I was on, I was in I think I was in Texas wearing a cardigan. And I thought about wearing it again because it felt like it was going to make me look official, like Mr. Rogersy, now that I have 3 children at home and I have a pipe that I'm smoking on the porch. But I figured I don't want to bring that Mr. Rogers attitude today because we have very serious adult issues to talk about. For one, there's astronauts that are stranded in outer space. I don't know if you've heard this story. It's official that they've been lost in space and they might not come back till next year, which begs the question I need you two to answer. Is space real?
Ooh, I mean, we're having a nice bit of drama, a little bit of theater. I'm not saying that it's definitively fake. I'm just saying this is a good Hollywood film, right? Lost in space where there is some sort of sonar emitting from within. You know, the call's coming from within the house. The sonar is coming from within the space station. I don't know. I mean, I was very much under the impression that space is fake and gay. That being said, I do like it's a gripping story, and I'm here for it.
It is a gripping story. Top, where are you with space?
Oh, well, you already know. But are they stuck in actual space, or is this outer Earth orbit?
There you go. There you go. I think if they were stuck in space, it would be in outer Earth orbit, but I don't even know if they're actually in space. I think it's like what Raven's saying. It's part of this drama plot. Foundering, before we recorded, he actually said something to me before we went live about how it's part of something. He just doesn't know what yet. I keep thinking about that. Like, what's it part of? Like, you know, we follow these narratives and, you know, like, okay, they plant that seed 6 months ago and like, where's that going to come up again? And here we are with these 2 astronauts. Is it just a love story that we're going to get on some network movie from, 2 months from now? Or is it like a symbol that we're all stranded astronauts in the void of reality?
Did you see the Netflix film Spaceman? Adam Sandler in a sort of a space station, and
yes,
there's an entity on the ship with him. It was an interesting film. I enjoyed it very much. Every time Adam Sandler steps into a new role that's not comedy, I'm just floored with like how much range the dude has. I really enjoy him. That being said,
yeah, can we talk about Adam Sandler for like the next 30 minutes?
Absolutely, dude. I love Adam Sandler. I'm not gonna lie to you. I love that dude.
Underrated. Yeah,
underrated
guy.
Simultaneously one of the most famous actors on the planet. But that film, he has a castaway, a stowaway rather, on his ship, and it's a giant spider. So I don't know. It's just interesting because in the ways that Adam Sandler's character is like signaling to Houston or whatever it is, there seems to be something on the ship. Are you guys picking up any of these disturbances? Are you catching anything on video? Is kind of the same energy before the show started. We're listening to that clip and it's like, hey, are you guys hearing this? Which, by the way, yeah, you could definitively hear there's some sort of like sonar emitting from the ship.
So is that movie predictive programming?
Ooh, yeah. I don't know. I mean, Top, you think so?
I think it's all been predictive programming from The Shining, right? Like, well, even before that, whenever they're talking about space, in my opinion, I don't think that if there is space out there, I don't think we can get there. And I know people might be screaming at me in the chat or in the audience. I'm not sure what type of audience you have here. I don't think we can get there.
I think they all know space is fake.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, because if you said this on Timcast, they'd be like, "What are you talking about?"
I have.
No, dude, it's fake. We definitely can't get there. That's for sure. I've seen Elon ding his rockets off the firmament or whatever's going on up there, but we're not going to space. We've seen Obama brag about getting to outer Earth orbit. I don't know, 50 years after we supposedly landed on the moon. So let's all consider this. And you're asking why the PSYOP? What is it leading to? Or what are we being tricked about? Or at least Foundering was asking that. Shout out to Foundering.
Yeah.
Love that guy.
So on Nephilim Death Squad, we think that the aliens are simply a rebranding. So if it starts off with space and it starts off with green alien creatures, fun stuff, all the way till now where we're talking about Nephilim in the Miami Mall or 10-foot giants in Las Vegas. And it all kind of points to the same thing that ancient cultures were looking at stories in the Bible to stories in Egypt, stories about Mesopotamia. There's always something coming down in a chariot of fire. It's bringing them knowledge, it's trading goods, and eventually it wants some form of sacrifice from you. And I think,
yes.
Yeah, I think we're just reliving this. We're refolding that adventure again. This time it's coming as aliens. But David, you could pick it up.
Why the rebrand? Why do you think they do that?
Well, the rebrand is, and I do want to go to something that you were just, because you were mentioning NASA and Shane mentioned Obama, and we do have that Obama film where it was Leave the World Behind, and the two younger characters in the film, one had an Obey shirt on, the other one had a NASA shirt on. There's always been like weird stuff having to do with NASA. As far as the rebranding, the why is because if we knew that these things were sort of our ancient adversarial entities that, according to the Bible, hate us, they rebelled against God, they were cast down to Mount Hermon, they had offspring with human women, they've been subverting mankind since the beginning. If we knew that, we wouldn't you sort of have a cult following of aliens, right? It's like, remember in Independence Day where some of the people climbed to a tall building in New York City to welcome the aliens? They had signs and welcome Space Brothers, and then they get totally annihilated. Well, that sentiment is kind of on the nose because there are a lot of people that have all these ideas about our benevolent Space Brothers. Certainly the narrative that we've been sold about them is that they come in and they stop nuclear launches before they happen. They'll shoot a laser beam. They'll stop a whole nuclear missile from being launched. There's this sentiment that they want to stop us from destroying ourselves, but also to stop us from destroying the planet. If you look at the Galactic Federation of Light, which is a whole basket of interesting information, it's this sentiment, this conspiracy theory that they want to help us ascend and elevate and evolve spiritually and take our place amongst this Galactic Federation of entities. They have to, and they've spent a long time doing it. And I do believe it started with NASA. And we can get into things like Jack Parsons being the father of modern day jet propulsion technology that NASA still uses, but for some reason is out in the desert using Aleister Crowley's, I believe it was like Babylon Workings is the name of the book, to bring in some entity into this realm, the Moonchild, with L. Ron Hubbard of all people. And these people, are intrinsically tied into the early days of NASA, but we would never accept it if it was as obvious as, oh, these are our old nemesis.
Right.
They hate us. You know,
Right.
they have to say, no, there are technologically advanced space brothers. They're coming here to stop us from mutually assured destruction and from destroying the planet. And I think that that's kind of where all this stuff is leading.
That's
But
something. Yeah, go.
Can I have a quick caveat?
Yeah.
Seeing Tucker Carlson say the same thing, that the alien are Nephilim, certainly did make me hit the brakes a little bit. My car was going real fast, and I tapped the brakes, and I was like, I'm not sold in that 100%, but I can
Right.
certainly say that that's what a lot of this is pointing towards.
It's like, why all of a sudden is this mainstream language? And now I'm suspicious of this because they're saying it on a TV. I trained myself to not trust the TV, and now the talking heads are saying it. So that's a good way to be, though, I would say. Do you think? Well, first I want to say, when I have these conversations with people who don't typically think about these things, their biggest question or problem with it is, why would they lie to us about these things, right? And you kind of answered that with, it's harder to accept these truths, but once you start thinking about this stuff, then you peel back the layer on literally everything you've ever been told. The shape of the earth, space, history, wars, everything, atom bombs. What do you think that it's the Nephilim running everything, or are there people doing it in behest for them? Who is engineering the false reality in your mind?
Well, there's layers of it, but I wanted to touch on Aleister Crowley that we briefly mentioned.
Yeah.
He was in contact with an entity named Lam, Lam, and it presented itself to him as like a big-headed, big-eyed gray. And I believe one of the quotes is like, we've been around, but people will call us demons, people will call us aliens in the future, but we'll always be the same thing. They'll just call us different things. And it also doesn't surprise me that some of these entities might have the ability to shapeshift because their fathers, the fallen angels, if you believe the mythology according to the Bible, and a lot of other mythology, I mean, most mythology, right? It's like half man, half God, this demigod sort of thing. That's what a Nephilim that's what Nephilim exactly is. But a lot of them had the ability to shapeshift. So their fathers, the Elohim, I believe they had faces of it was like a face of a tiger, of a lion. There's a face of a bull. There's a face of an eagle. You'll see it on the Rothschilds logo and the logo. So you'll see this all over the place. So it doesn't surprise me that these things kind of they can look however they want to us. What was the question again, man?
About who's engineering these false realities?
Right. I don't think the Nephilim are engineering this. The Nephilim are the foot soldiers. They're just the children. There are the fallen angels. There's about 200 of them and possibly more that have fallen in rebellion against God. They understand the prophecy according to the book of Enoch, and they know that their time is coming. In the book of Enoch, they've interceded and asked God for forgiveness, and God was like, no, you're going to watch your kids kill each other, and then you're next. I'm going to lock you in the pit of hell. Enoch was even shown these places and shown where they go. So their goal is to just cause as much chaos, subvert as much as possible, and I think it's played out like by their foot soldiers on the ground, which are the Nephilim, or the disembodied spirits of the Nephilim. After they died in ancient times, they just kind of roam the earth in this other dimension, and they're what we would consider demons, what we would see during a night terror,
Right.
or possibly an abduction.
So let me say something that's going to tie three of the things we've just been talking about together. Let's see your reaction, what you want to say about it. You said chaos, you said Crowley, we talked about NASA. Think back to the solar eclipse that we just had, and it happened on the anniversary of Crowley summoning that demon. And the rockets they launched into the eclipse were named APEP, which were the god of chaos. What's going on there? Are we in trouble?
It's hard to say what's going on there. I mean, a lot of these things we're really seeing large scale rituals that are steeped in like ancient esoteric information that we're not privy to. A lot of people think that these are just, scientific explorations or things of that nature. But yeah, I forget the exact details. It was like the name of the rockets that they were shooting had something to do with some sort of lowercase g god too.
Yeah.
There was a lot there. It escapes me at the moment, but to say, are we in trouble? I don't know. It's really hard. I've got out of the business of making predictions. As a young conspiracy theorist, I was wrong more often than I was right. 2006, 2007, I was a teenager and I was immersed in all this stuff. I kept ringing the bell, telling people that they were going to implement martial law and turn, Walmarts into FEMA camps, and that never came to pass. But
As far as we know.
Not yet.
Yeah.
But I'm out of the business these days of making predictions. I can say that it's not good. At the very least, it's very obvious, or it should be now. I think a lot of people have woken up after the past 4 years that the elites of this world are they're privy to knowledge that we don't understand. And just to expand a little bit on that idea of like who's in charge or who's pulling the strings, I think Top nailed it with this idea of like at the very top of it is the fallen angels, the disembodied spirits of their deceased offspring. I think that the spiritual realm has a tremendous, not only is it real, but it has a tremendous amount of influence over the happenings on the world stage in the physical realm that we inhabit. I think that there are degrees to which some of these players on the world stage are aware. I think at the highest levels, some of these elite and all these different, they're different secret societies and such, they're committing to rituals and they're communing with entities and they're getting information and they're aware of what they're doing. But then there is lower degrees of influence where there are movers and shakers. Sometimes I start to think that a lot of people aren't even aware why they do the things they do. They're inspired to do one thing or another, or something catches in a culturally significant way and it feels organic. But sometimes I doubt whether or not that's even organic. I think that there is a lot of spiritual influence over these things. So I think much like, Area 51, where they're reverse engineering crashed craft, there's compartmentalization all throughout this game.
Yep.
I think you could even get like on a hotter subject here. Like a lot of people love to ask the JQ nowadays, and that's becoming a really big thing.
Yep.
And besides the memes that some are kind of funny, there's a lot more nuance to it, right? Where it's like, well, okay, yeah, they are in positions of power, but then it's like, well, who owns this? Like, who is actually influencing? And there's like a very small percentage that are. Yep. Then you look at the rest of the people, the Jewish people, and you're like, they like to point fingers. Oh, it's all of them. I'm not so sure. I don't think so. Well, I know that those people operate on generational trauma, like from whether it be ancient Egypt, we were slaves, walking through the desert 40 years, the Holocaust. These people operate on this kind of trauma. So what then comes out from these people? It's are they acting on their own will? No, definitely not.
And there's evil forces that take over any type of religion or so-called religion and turn it into false. And something you guys have been doing on Twitter that I think is interesting. Raven did it recently with the Zeus post, seeing which posts do well, right? And like what seems to be astroturfed or not. Top, you've been doing similar stuff. It's like certain things, for whatever reason, even though they're so-called hot button issues, they do so well. And you put out some other wholesome post and no one sees it. We don't know what even controversial means on these things. And when I see you guys doing stuff like that, or you watch these things blow up on Twitter, that connects in my mind to this larger idea of who's running the narrative. Obviously, Twitter's the narrative these days. It's the public square. It's like shifting collective conscious into different areas. And we're all starting, it's weird to know like everyone can look at one thing immediately and all have a certain type of joke about it. Everyone's kind of looking at something and it's like it's training us to all think together, which is, I think, really scary. And yeah, I've been seeing the JQ stuff or whatever, you name it. It's anything that's trending. Olympics, the assassination attempt, which I want to get into with you guys in a little bit. It's like you're teaching it the algorithm, and then it's teaching you how to think, and that stuff is terrifying.
It's even more diabolical. And I know that one of our favorite people on Twitter, Elon Musk, who has now ignored me for the last year and a half.
You were friends for like this bit.
Yeah, but me too. Like right there, Josie and then Elon, but we'll never meet, never again, because he made that mistake once. But he amplified a tweet that I made. And I'm doing this stuff because I'm operating in the realm of comedy, but also kind of giving you a little truth. Where I made a joke about it was a joke about adrenochrome and Jewish people.
It was great.
Yeah, it's funny, right? But I mean, it's nothing to like. I'm not going to write home about this. It was just like a throwaway.
Right.
He amplified it, and I had a long time. I was thinking about it for a long time. Why?
Yeah, right.
And now I kind of understand why, because I see other accounts like these accounts that are created in 2023, and they're like, "Oh, did you know that this person Jewish person owns this business?" And 100,000 followers.
I know.
not only 100,000 followers, but they're getting engagement off the charts and they're being paid. So now I'm massaging your pocket and your dopamine receptors to do this. It's just genius, and it looks like Elon was orchestrating it. I don't know who's orchestrating it, but this narrative is supposed to be out there and it's going to be dangerous.
Dude, so this is my thing is like, we know that there hasn't been a cultural movement since like the 60s that's not been co-opted by an intelligence agency. I don't think that they would allow something that has any promise as a grassroots movement to go very long without being co-opted. That being said, I think with the advent of social media, it's way worse than it used to be. It's way worse. And I see, to your point, Shane, you were talking about a tweet that I made where it's like, I made a thoughtful post. There's a rise of like Hitler admiration. And it's because people are discovering that, things that happened in the Weimar Republic and how many people, 20 million people died and the Bolshevik Revolution and all these different things. And maybe we were lied to about the Nazis and maybe we misunderstood Hitler. And I'm like, I can start to see that sentiment, because the way history is written, it's often a lie. Right. So, I can get behind that and that's fine. But then all of a sudden it jumps to this like admiration for Hitler. And I go, well, this just seems a little bit strange. It wasn't long ago that we were complaining about Operation Paperclip. NASA is created by Nazis that, we took after the war ended, and we put them in positions of power in these various industries that now today you look at them and they're monumental industries. And so it wasn't that long ago that was the discussion. Now all of a sudden it's like, well, maybe Hitler was based. Right. And I go, well, there's a lot of, during this conversation that's been unfolding on Twitter for the past couple of years, there's been a rise in what I would say in like traditional values, Christianity, Catholicism. And there's this sentiment that somehow Hitler was Christian or he was Catholic. And I didn't go above and beyond to like do this deep dive. I just said, hey, let's look at the iconography. Let's see what's surrounding Hitler. He does a speech from the Zeppelin Tribune, the fairgrounds that were designed. The area that he gives a speech from was designed after the Temple of Zeus, the altar at Pergamum. Yep. In the Bible, it says that Pergamum is where the throne of Satan is, and Pergamum is ancient Turkey. And in ancient Turkey is where they found the Temple of Zeus. And that's what they designed their fairgrounds after. And it's like there are images that are associated with Zeus. Certainly the Greek architecture, which is fine. I understand that a lot of that bleeds over. We just had a discussion with Jeremy Slate about the bleeding over of architecture from ancient Greece into even modern day America.
Of course.
But what about the eagle? For example, his number one animal that he would transmutate into was an eagle. What about the lightning bolts? What about a man in a suit with a giant eagle behind him, lightning bolts on his chest, giving speeches from the altar of Zeus, the temple of Zeus?
He's methed out.
Yeah,
and he's
super
not
methed out.
Right? Which is a fantastic way to commune with entities. Not a single Christian or Catholic icon to be found, but there's a ton of Zeus veneration. So that's the post that I made. I did a little bit of research. I added some sources in there, thought it was great, fell on deaf ears. I go over and I say, how about this one? Very low effort, Shane. Very low effort. I go, it's the Jews. And it takes off. And I go, wow. And I don't know if that's because you silenced the conversation and created a pressure cooker of an environment where now that pressure cooker is burst open and there's an overcorrection, or if there's something more nefarious behind it. But to Top's point, it's like when Elon Musk responds to your Jew joke meme, right, and boosts it, you have to go, is there something else going?
Oh, let's hear it.
As someone who's been making fun of the Jews for the last 3 years, it's been very difficult because it's not been allowed. And that's why I've been doing it specifically.
But you have a Jew fro.
How dare you?
He's
Sorry,
Hasidic.
I had to.
Top is Hasidic Jewish. No one knows this.
That explains it. You're from Long Island too, aren't you?
You're both Puerto Rican, I think.
Okay.
But yeah, so I've been kind of doing this, making fun of, because my idea is to touch on the comedy or the things that aren't allowed to be said. That's what I like to do. Yeah. And now it's allowed to be said. Right. And now again, with like same thing with Tucker Carlson, I'm like, I'm going to take a step back and say, why? Right. Why are we allowed to say it?
Yeah. I think that's the interesting thing is, okay, they stopped the whole world for basically like it was COVID when Kanye did what he did. And then Elon he owned Twitter, and he had the biggest problem with it. I was with Kanye when Elon said he wanted to punch him in the face over all that stuff on Alex Jones with the Hitler comments. And now Elon owns Twitter, and it's just amplifying all of those posts. And it's so fun. And when he liked your thing, do you think he even knew the joke? Like, I think he just saw the image of Mel Gibson looking jacked and liked it. Like, I'm not sure if did it go over his head, or was he like, this is funny? I wonder what you think his interpretation of that was.
How well do you think Neuralink works?
Well, I have talked to people with Neuralink.
It was like, because I've asked Owen Benjamin he made a joke recently. I think it was about Candace Owens or something like that.
Right.
And he was like, do you guys get this? Because I'm getting like a lot of hate. So I took it, copy, paste, put it into Grok. I said, what does this mean? And Grok is like, this is clear. It's controversy, but it's also comedy. And he's doing it for this, and this is the reason. And I was like, yeah, exactly. So they know. So I think Elon knows. You don't get high. He got high in his own supply. You always test your product. He's got this thing in his head probably. So he sees it. He knows exactly what he's doing. It's also not it's not a surprise. Well, actually, I guess it is a surprise. He banned Kanye after Kanye posted the Raelian sign, which there's a lot there, right? It's the swastika inside of the Star of David, but it's actually a sign for fallen angel worship, the Raelian cult.
The Raelians, yep.
A lot.
And there's a connection, I think, between Elon and the Raelians. Wasn't there? People were saying that there was some like an award given to him or something. I could be, maybe I dreamt that, but I feel like people are making that connection. I'm putting it out there as if it's true anyway. But yeah, it's weird to me. And it was weird to me to see Elon freak out about that type of language, only to have it, Twitter become what it's become. And then I think like, well, what's next? And is it to just keep us all mad at each other? Do you think they're even aware of why this is? Is just an ancient darkness that humans have to participate in, to be mad at one another and blame people, and we get nowhere, because it seems like we just repeat the same things over and over.
Here's my suspicion. This is something that I play around with, that I worry about. It's like, the buck doesn't stop at the Jews, right? The buck goes beyond that. We believe that wholeheartedly. On the show, we predominantly talk about spirituality. We are engaged as a species in spiritual warfare at all times. This goes beyond the physical realm.
Right.
But what you've done here is you've created a culture of noticing. I often have this analogy of like when I was a kid, I was 16, 17 years old. I was waking up to all this stuff. I was alone in that sentiment. No one was around to reaffirm the things that I was trying to bring to their attention. And thankfully, that was the case, because I went on to be wrong several times. Now, what I'm concerned about is everyone's going through this great awakening, right, Shane? It's like in this moment, everyone is discovering all this. Really kind of COVID, I think, was responsible for that.
Oh, for sure.
And I don't think that me being wrong was indicative of me being a young man, as much as it was indicative of a human being who is coming to terms with the fact that the official narrative was a lie all this time.
Yep.
And that kind of freaks you out. And you jump to a lot of conclusions. Now, what happens when 4 years ago, everybody starts to wake up and everybody is on there's so many people that are at the beginning of this journey. And what's happening now is, number one, they can look around and be affirmed by other people. I had no one. Right. But now you can look left and right, and there's a whole community of noticers out there. Yeah. Now, what happens when you put this in front of them and you go, here's the source of all your problems? When in the Bible, it says that in the end times, there's going to be, the synagogue of Satan, these people that are claiming to be Jews but are not Jews.
Right.
And I'm wondering, is that what we're experiencing right now? But the buck is stopping at the Jew.
Well, yeah, because I think they don't want you to look any further. I think evil transcends evil's every pocket. Evil's in churches and synagogues. It's in mosques. People are evil, and they're all over the place. And like the world is just dark. And like I said earlier on Twitter, all the problems we're facing today started after the fall of man, and everything's just kind of snowballed out of there. And it's nothing new. It's human nature. Evil's everywhere. And I think once you start to put your idea of evil in a silo, you're now blinding yourself to all the other evil that's out there. And it allows other evil to come in and then hijack your perception of evil and keep you stuck in that, and there's no progress, and like real progress, not the bad kind of progress, like progress towards God, not progress towards hell, which is what most people on this planet seem to be wanting. But yeah, Twitter is in my mind, part of the engineer of the false reality. And it was awesome when Elon initially bought it, this is funny. I don't think I've ever said this, and I've talked to Top a lot. One of the first interactions I ever had with anyone in Tower Gang was the weekend Elon announced buying Twitter. And remember that day when Twitter just seemed open all of a sudden? Like people were talking and there was engagement all over. Someone, it might have been Jose, I forget who it was, Tower Gang just kind of fell out of the abyss all of a sudden. Like, who are these crazy? Oh, these people are nuts. I love these people. So I do want to thank Elon for bringing us together. But it's become something such different. Like I was hoping to keep it the way it felt that day, where it's like there was no gates. And now there's gates, and the gates are kind of siloing you down to different perception paths, and you're getting stuck in it. And that's worrisome because it's basically just what the TV did. And I grew up hating the TV because it did that to the people older than me. I'm watching them watch their specific news channel, and they believe everything that news channel says. But you click up one channel or down one channel, and there's just a whole different world that people are digesting. Now Twitter is that, but like I've been calling it the reality buffet. Like you were saying, Raven. Anything you want to be true, just go up and find it, and you can have a whole community now to back you up, and it's wild stuff, man. But I don't know, how do we break that? What is it? I know how to break it. I mean, I know my own answer. It's God, but how do we convince people to help break it?
Oof.
You gotta find the back door, right?
Yeah.
I think comedy worked for a little while. I don't think it's working much anymore. I think that they're keen to some of the sarcasm that people are using. I don't know if you even can break this. And we are kind of late in the game, in my opinion, to break this stuff. It's like, I think the reason Tucker Carlson is now talking about aliens being demons or spiritual entities from another dimension is because the J stuff is kind of out there, and that will wear off soon. And the truth underneath, they have to create this soft landing, right? So we're quickly headed towards something. I say it a bunch, and it's not a prediction, but I think that we're going to be headed towards really, really strange stuff that's in your face, and people will just accept it like it's normal. And I'm talking about actual Nephilim. Have you seen these AI videos? This is just a thought.
Oh yeah.
I wasn't expecting to talk about this,
Let's
but
do it.
They just put in, I don't know what kind of prompts they're putting in. They're putting pictures, and AI is just transmuting them into these horror story movies.
Oh.
And
No, I
it
haven't
looks
seen
like, it'll be like a teddy bear, and then he turns into a dragon, and the dragon eats the person that's snowboarding or whatever that's going on. It's just bizarre acid trip, right?
Yeah, sometimes I think about it, and it almost looks like a dream emulator. And I know a lot of people are saying that lately. There's something up with AI videos that the transitions and the overall haunting feel and the confusion somehow seems to be they created a dream emulator. But I think, to your question, Shane, it's how do we stop this? I think people need to, there are all of these symbols, right? They surround all of the secret societies, and it's what populates the satanic imagery that's all over the music videos in the music industry, and it's all over the Hollywood films that Hollywood's producing. And it's strange to me that we've stopped at the door of a group of people that we think are responsible for all of our ailments. And the thing about that is that I think we were engineered to feel that way. It's we're so destitute in this moment, and we're so desperate, and we want two things. We want a clear identifier as to who the enemy is, and we want a hero to swoop in and save us. That's a very dangerous place to be, because if they can effectively convince you that a group of people are the enemy, and if they can put a hero in place, it's like Albert Pike, author of Morals and Dogma, when the people need a hero, we shall provide one for them. If they can create an enemy, and right now we're in the middle of those throes. We're suffering because of you. You're controlling this industry. You're controlling that industry. You're creating the predatory loans. You're running the porn industry. You're cranking up the propaganda. Once those cries reach a height, if they put somebody in place that's going to play the hero for us, that's a very dangerous place to be. But I do think that we've been culturally engineered because, like I said, there's no such thing as culture, in my opinion, anymore. It's been engineered since as long as we can remember, probably in human history. I don't think there's ever been a time where there's not been a shady group who's trying to push this ideology and curb that ideology. But it is interesting that as a people, we've gotten to the door, and the door is covered in like sigils and symbols and all of this connection to these like, spiritual entities. And we're looking at the flesh instead of like, well, what the hell does that mean? Because really the revelation that I'd like to see, the big realization, the big awakening that I'd like to see people engage in isn't the people with the little hats are subverting us. It's wait. There are spiritual entities out there. And all of our consent and all the things that we engage in are feeding one spiritual entity or another. And we better make sure that what we're participating in, it's like what Owen Benjamin says. It's basically extreme accountability, right?
Yeah.
It's like instead of looking to somebody else as the source of all your woes, take responsibility for every little thing you do, because everything you do is feeding something spiritually. What are you feeding?
The exact opposite of the victimhood culture that we live in, which seems connected to all that.
By the way, Shane, is the thing that we have been railing against for the past, I don't know how many years. It's victimhood culture. And then all of a sudden, they gave us a bad guy, and we're just lapping it up and being good victims.
Don't you see everyone, that when you start to hate something so much, you become it. Like it just happens all the time, and people need to watch out. And I also, when you're talking about like the people arriving to that door, it's almost like on a widespread scale, we're self-sabotaging as a society. It's like, because once you open it, you can't close it, and there's no going back. We're close though, because I really do believe lockdowns accelerated the existential renaissance of everyone opening up their minds and being like, oh, we've been lied to about. They're lying to us about yesterday and today. Of course they lied to us about 100 years ago, 50 years ago, everything. So I do believe that. And I think we need to pray to God more. And I think God, I go to church. I went to church twice today, and it was amazing. I feel great. I feel great. I don't think people need to go to church, but I think people should believe in God. But like, I like going because I like being in a community of people and having my kids see the importance of it. And for me, I feel like creating that foundation is one way of shattering all the illusions, because for me, it's just one truth, right? And if my kids can see that, which I didn't have growing up, I had like the illusion of that. It wasn't very serious. And then I was anti that for a long part of my life, which is in itself was like a form of like substance abuse, it opened up bad holes in my soul. So that's what I've been doing, and it feels great. But when we talk about these false realities, the reality buffet, people can go and find anything they want. I'm going to shift gears a little bit to something you guys were doing in the past month and plus that got a lot of people angry, but also I thought was interesting, questioning the assassination attempt on the former president. And I wrote about this recently, and I kind of like to share all the angles that everyone had on that day. What was it for you guys? Because it started immediately when it happened, and the people were upset. And Top and I talked, and I was like, we should be free to ask any question without people getting hurt. You should be able to ask any question, especially because on our shows we talk about being lied to all the time about things that are very serious, like Northwoods and JFK and stuff like that. So what was it at that point already that you guys were like, I don't buy all this?
It just looked like bullshit. What do you want me to say, Shane? You saw it. It was strange. But no, what got me questioning at first, because it happened and I read about it and I didn't watch like all the videos and all that stuff. So I realized that I was like myself from 2016 for a second. And I actually went on Facebook. I haven't used Facebook in a while. And I went on my Facebook and I was like, if you guys were calling for the assassination of Trump at any time, that you should be prosecuted. And I still kind of feel that way because I know good people that went to prison for January 6th. And I know other people in my family, friends, especially people on Facebook that celebrated it. Well, if this indeed was true, I think that then the same rules should apply to you. Do I think it's true? no. Now I'm in the camp of Rosie O'Donnell and Joy Behar, but it kind of plays out like a movie, like a boomer movie, and it's fun, and I want to be a part of it. I want to eat the steak, right? But I'm like, that's not my job here. I can't do that. If you're a political operative, maybe. Like, I don't know what these people truly think in their heart of hearts, but if I was operating on Republican and Democrat politics, I'd use this all day. And I think a better question right now is, why isn't it being used all day?
Right.
Why? What's going on?
What do you think it is? Because people don't believe it, or people don't want you to believe it, or it ran its course? It was in and out. It's weird. Something so supposedly serious. I still see people share images of his ear. Like the other day, he was at the Arlington Cemetery, and people are sharing his ear. The argument then against that would be, there was only grazed by the bullet and it healed quickly. But other people would say, I thought they told us 2 centimeters of skin were taken off. So what are you left with?
The entire thing is, I'm trying to recall all the details, right? Because it feels like it's been 7 years.
It has been.
Happened.
Yeah.
Right. We're on like a 2-hour news cycle at this point. There's something going on every 2 hours. But this guy goes in. I have a rangefinder right over there. He goes in with a rangefinder. This thing is sus. It's like a mini binocular, and it has a couple of buttons, and you just it tells you how many yards, feet, and sometimes inches you are away from the target. And the CIA or the Social Security, the Secret Service, whatever, some government.
I like that Freudian slip. That's weird.
Yeah, they see it. They go, cool. You go right in. And he's like, okay. So this kid walks in and he finds a ladder. He puts it on the building that they're all drinking coffee under. And then he doesn't use the ladder, and he climbs up to the roof, and he's up there for like 3 minutes, and people are screaming for 3 minutes that he's there. It's like everybody knows what's going on. He's there. He's taking aim, and nobody does the thing. Now it could be that they wanted him offed, right? But I don't see it that way. There's too many people there to allow this to happen.
The people saying, when people hear someone say that Trump staged it, the argument against that would be like, well, then did they sacrifice the guy who died? And then I think something happened. I do. And I don't know, the ear is weird to me. I don't really buy the healing so fast thing, because they did say the 2 centimeter stuff, but they have sacrificed people in the past. That's the problem. That's why my defense always for Alex Jones and the Sandy Hook thing was, if they've talked about things like Northwoods, it makes it okay to then question anything, even if it makes you uncomfortable. And Sandy Hook is horrible. I don't want to think about dead kids at all. But if something happens and it's political, immediately, and they use it and they weaponize it back against the people and take your power, your freedoms away, that's what Northwoods was. Why wouldn't they? It's not like they just stopped doing that stuff. They don't stop thinking these things through.
I mean, Shane, we just shut the whole world down.
Right. Exactly.
And not only did we do that, but we hit everybody with a "how dare you." What about the old people? What about your grandma? What about your grandpa? And we stopped people from going to work. We kicked people out of the military. People's loved ones died alone in the hospital. The economy was tanked. We've seen horrifying things. We rolled out an experimental, medical procedure on the populace.
Yep.
Well, they were. Listen. I'll just go out and say it. They were killing people. The whole ventilator thing. They knew it was the wrong prognosis, the wrong diagnosis.
And they let that happen for a month or two, and they were crying on TV saying, "We need the ventilators." And how soon into it? I mean, I feel like it wasn't even that long after the ventilators were hurting everybody or killing everybody, because they were doing the opposite of what people needed, that they actually did come out and say, okay, these are really bad, we don't need them. After Cuomo, because I was, maybe Top, you were probably in New York still too, right? So they were begging on TV, we need the ventilator, we need that ship that Trump sent that I don't think they even used,
the Mercy and whatever the hell the other one is
in California or something. Yeah.
It's wild too, considering he's the father of the vaccine and initiated Operation Warp Speed. It's weird because people will, there was a time where we were sort of aligned with the right. The thing is, I've never been political. I've always been a conspiracy theorist. It's just that a lot of the conspiracies were leaning in the favor of the right. And then when it came to this, you started to realize who was actually a critical thinker and who was just a party lines guy. And that how dare you all of a sudden happened again. The very same sentiment that was echoed when you wouldn't get a vaccine, or you were questioning the origins of where everything came from, or, you know, weren't comfortable with Fauci, any of the things, the lockdowns, it was all how dare you. And then because this guy died in the audience, which is a tragedy, and it's horrifying, and it's terrible that it happened.
And they spelled his name wrong. How dare they?
They spelled his name wrong.
That
Very
was
bizarre.
weird.
But you got hit with the same thing, the how dare you. And it was like, oh, okay, you were never a critical thinker. But my thing with Trump has always been, I got to start by saying I like Trump. I never disliked Trump for his rhetoric. I never disliked Trump for the shots that he would take at people. I loved that stuff. I think he's a funny guy. I think he's a charismatic guy. I like the policies. I think the country was better when he was the president. That being said, the guy wrote The Art of the Comeback, and from where I'm sitting, we are watching a bit of theater unfold, and it is the comeback story. And we talked to a lot of people. One of them in particular is Donnie Darkin on Twitter. He's a great guy, and he laid out a lot of really compelling evidence for, you know, in his opinion, Trump being the Antichrist. Now, I don't know if I would go that far. I do recognize there's a lot of really strange, uncanny coincidences surrounding Trump, but he laid out enough that Top and I looked at each other and we said, okay, well, if this is true, then here are some things you might expect to see. You might expect to see him mirror something, you know, that is like the persecution of Christ. And in that way, you can look at the political persecution against him, you know, the classified documents that fell apart, the sexual assault allegations that fell apart, 34 accounts he's found guilty on, that falls apart. All of these things, they just mount and mount. And it very much looks like, to anybody who's paying attention, that they are levying flimsy allegations at a guy who really is trying to do what's right for the country. So he's trying to do what's right for you, and the bad guys keep getting in the way. And then we said, well, if this is true, then you might also expect to see him survive a headshot. It wasn't even that he would have an assassination attempt or that he would die. We said survive a headshot. It wasn't our idea. This is just, you know, having conversations with people that say, hey, look at all these strange biblical alignments having to do with him. And then we also said that you would see him go on a massive vindication tour. And to me, that plays out like a really excellent comeback story. And I personally believe that politics at the highest level is theater. And what I will say is the caveat to that is I do not know. I couldn't give you a good reason as to why he's not leveraging this shot to his advantage. You know, the idea that they wouldn't, even if the cut wasn't substantial, the idea that they wouldn't then give him a substantial cut and parade him out in front of the people. I will admit that is something that I'm not a guy that has all the answers. I'm a guy that's very suspicious of things. And when I see that, I go, man, it feels odd to me. It feels like it's missing the mark. I thought we were going to get more of it when he did that space with Elon Musk. They did start to talk about it in the beginning. It was the first time we really heard him talk at length about the assassination attempt. But that being said, still nothing comes of it. I can't tell you why.
My thought was, if we want to believe the way it played out in terms of him getting attacked, obviously there's a billion things we could question about that day, but one idea is maybe he's like, I'm going to be the anti-victimhood guy, you know, because you could play the victim card hard with this, but he's also like, that would be exactly what the left would do. I don't even know if he's that high level.
But my thing, Shane, is like, it would fit his character if he came out and he was like, he was a terrible shot. I know. He missed. I'm still here. Like, it would have been great.
To Shane's point, and I'm sure I haven't listened to Timcast in a while, but I'm sure that they should be harping on his campaign strategy.
Right.
It's been awful.
Yeah.
Absolutely awful.
I don't like anything lately.
Yeah, he's not the guy we saw in 2016. And you can tell by his tweets now. It's like his assistant writing them.
It's not the same. I
have a small conspiracy.
Oh, yeah. Let's hear it.
I think he's part of the machine.
Oh, yeah. Well, that could fall in line with what Donnie Darkin says with him being the Antichrist. It's very possible. I mean, he picks really bad people to work with. There's some great ones, but
he's what you would call like the the mascot for the beast system. This is Donnie and what he's deciphered. And I tend to agree with them. There's the harlot system, which is Biden and Kamala and this terrible leftist ideology we've been suffering through for all this time. The pendulum is about to swing, and we are going to see the replacement with what Donnie calls the beast system. But there is a lot of strange stuff. I mean, Top has sitting behind him the Ingersoll Lockwood books, right? This is an author from like the late 1800s.
I was just going to bring that up. I just wrote down
dude.
Baron Time Traveler on my car. That's hilarious.
You can't have a Trump discussion without time
There we
travel.
go. Hey, look at that. I know the guy who
you
wrote that
go.
book.
Yeah,
Oh,
these
sick, dude.
are really. Oh wait, there we go.
That's amazing. Top showing,
this one.
for
There
we
those
go.
listening, top
We're just
showing
killing
the
it out
greatest
there.
books that have ever been written.
Crush it. But yeah, man, I mean, these Ingersoll Lockwood books, for those of you who don't know, it's an author who comes out with a series of books in the late 1800s. One of them is called Little Baron Trump, or The Marvelous Adventures of Little Baron Trump. The other one's called The Last President. And, you know, it's about a little boy from decadence who travels through time and you know, goes on these adventures. It's narrated by a guy named the Don, master of the universe or something to that extent, which is interesting because Donald means like, you know, king or ruler or emperor or something of that nature.
Right.
And then you have, you know, he's got a house or some place that he operates out of. It's got the same address as his Trump Towers on Fifth Avenue, the exact same address in New York City. And then, of course,
that's in 1900, The Last President. That's like describing,
Right.
it's a book about Donald Trump,
Right.
describing a bombastic dude from New York becomes president in the same tower.
where do you guys,
It's strange.
I think about this a lot. Where do you guys land with that kind of thing? Is it like the evil forces we were talking about at the beginning of the show? Are they seeing that put out into the world and then engineering that to fit Donald Trump's life? Is Ingersoll tapped into something like remote viewing or some type of psychic viewing? Like, is it just coincidence, which I don't believe in?
So
No.
there's a theory that was going around, but I think it's like kind of I think we've had Ed, our favorite guest Ed Mabry kind of debunked it. It's called the Little Season. You know, are you familiar with that?
It sounds familiar. Tell me again.
Okay, so the Little Season theory is basically that we are operating post-tribulation, post the Book of Revelation.
Okay.
And we already went through the 1,000 years of Jesus's reign with an iron rod.
Right.
And now we are in the Little Season, which Satan is released. There's no specific on the time frame. Ed seems to think it's a very short season because whenever God refers to seasons in the Bible, he's referring to literal seasons.
I think
The
he said like
argument
3.5 years or something.
Yeah, the argument against that would be, you know, in the Bible it says that to God 1 day is 1,000 years and 1,000 years is 1 day. Right. So time is confused in the spiritual realm, or not confused, but very different. So people think that we are in the little season right before the final judgment of these demons, these fallen angels that will be then cast into the pit of hell and stay there forever, locked up forever. So when I see Trump like get a headshot, you know, the Bible says that he'll suffer a mortal head wound, and it's like it rhymes,
But not quite.
Not quite. But then it's also like, hey, like what did John see when he was, you know, shown this in a vision?
Right.
You see a guy's ear explode and you see blood shoot out of it, and you're a dude from, you know, 70 AD Jerusalem. What does it look like? Looks like a mortal head wound. I don't know. So is it stuff that's playing out, things that we already know and they're kind of showing it to us again because it's familiar, or is this prophecy being fulfilled?
Well, I have my little suspicions with Ingersoll Lockwood. Sometimes I feel like, yeah, sure. If there is a time travel element to this, I almost feel like they dropped that book on the timeline because nobody found it till like 2019. I think that's very strange. But there's also this thing, 1958. There's an episode of a show called Trackdown. And the episode is called The End of the World. And there is a con man named Trump who tricks the people of this village that the world is going to be destroyed, but he can stop it by building a wall.
No way.
1958. It's called The Trackdown. The episode is for the audience. They can look it up. It's called Trackdown, and the episode is called The End of the World. I mean, there's a lot of weird stuff about Trump. I don't know if it's a genuine. I mean, you know, his uncle worked for MIT. Mm-hmm. was responsible for, cleaning up Nikola Tesla's paperworks and, I don't know, allegedly his some of his leftover inventions. But the FBI did request an analysis of Tesla's paperwork from John Trump as to whether or not there was anything viable or interesting in there. And I don't remember what his final thoughts on the whole thing were, but Nikola Tesla is the guy that is often suspected to have figured out time travel. But and then you look at and I always bring this up because I just think
he's also a guy that was in deep contact with entities. Like another person, him, David Icke, many others say that they've summoned entities in order to, I don't know, maybe they act as their muse for whatever technological advances they're making. But please,
doesn't seem safe.
Yeah, it's probably a good idea. I think they wouldn't lie.
No.
But the other thing that I love to bring up surrounding Donald Trump is Marina Abramovic, who is everybody's favorite satanic artist,
spirit cooker.
Now,
seen her in person.
She's great. She crushes.
She crushes.
And now she is the ambassador to education for Ukraine, which is phenomenal.
Yes.
Very strange. She tells this story. You can find the recording where she communes with a bunch of shamans who just got finished, group dreaming or something. They have a shared vision. And what they report to her is that Donald Trump is the magician who will awaken the world, which is a very interesting set of words to use to describe Donald Trump, especially considering MAGA means magician or sorcerer. And I think it's interesting, too, because when you hear that, you go like, wow, is this like a magical aspect to this, like maybe a spiritual one? But it's interesting that she should have used the word magician, because a magician does not actually perform magic. He deceives you. He tricks you. Even though you know that there's no magic involved, he still manages to trick you right in front of your own face. And so I often think about that aspect as being potent, especially considering what I just read, that episode of Trackdown. It's a con man. Right. In the form of Trump, who saves this village by fabricating an end of the world scenario and building a wall.
And magicians can be extremely powerful and totally warp your perception of reality. And just this morning, speaking of church, we're looking at Exodus. We're looking at magicians, the Pharaoh's magicians, trying to one up Moses, right? And they can to a certain degree until God's like, well, I'm done with playing games, But that goes back forever. And for me, the magician stuff, when you're talking about politics being theater, that's all wrapped up into the same type of thing for me, because it's like that's an illusion. Obviously, a theater, Hollywood, movies, it's an illusion. And then in terms of politics, it's odd that Lincoln was assassinated by an actor in a theater. It's like they're signaling something to you, being like, we know, and you might know, but just in case, we're going to drop this right here. And
Shane, what's funny about that is they used to do it in a way that was more not tongue in cheek, but more, I don't know, like cloak and dagger, right? It was cooler. You're like, wait, he was assassinated by an actor in a theater? Right. Now they just roll Hulk Hogan out and he goes, yeah, brother, none of this is real.
Right, exactly. But that's them signaling to us that it's even worse. The reality is so sea level now. It's like WWE. We're mimicking, and no offense, I grew up watching WWF. I love it. But that's the reality. And the Trump we know was born out of WWF. Which when I was thinking about you guys talking about the staged attempt on his life, I'm thinking about what he must have learned from Vince, in the ring, pulling off these spectacles.
It's we always talk about consent on the show, not age of consent. We're not libertarians. We talk about consent. Yeah, so all right, so Matthew Crooks tried to steal Trump's life. It's like, okay, and you put your money with a guy named Bernie Madoff, and he made off with your money. Owen Benjamin can go all day about this stuff.
Yes, I love it.
To me, it's a form of consent at this point. They're always trying to all right, so again, back to the Jew stuff. If you go to New York, there's fish wire around Manhattan.
I lived in Brooklyn. I know about it. Yeah, it's loopholes.
Brooklyn as well.
Yep.
And it's basically to mark their territory, and they're saying that this is their edifice, their home edifice. So therefore, on the Sabbath, they could do business or do whatever they have to do inside of this fish wire. They're tricking God. And it's just, it's not a new thing. It's constantly trying to trick God with the spiritual rule. So the spiritual rule is if you're going to do something to someone, they must consent. And I think the powers that be are hey, listen, we told these people, like we told them it was Matthew Crooks, you know, Abraham Lincoln was assassinated in a theater by an actor. We're telling you. So if you agree, you've consented.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think that they think that that's good enough. And
they
it
love
might
it.
be. I don't know.
They love the revelation. They're like, we made Anthony Weiner send pics of his wiener. Like they're telling you, they're not lying. They're just, it's right up in your face. And it's crazy that not everyone's awake to that. It's so blatant.
You know why? Because I think sometimes when things are so blatant, it's almost like, nah, it couldn't be. Like, you know, we're talking about Donnie Darkin speculating as to whether or not Trump is the Antichrist. Well, Trump's father's middle name was Christ, and his mother's name was Mary, and his grandmother's last name was Christ.
Right.
It's very strange.
Yeah.
What a very strange thing.
I don't think Trump is the Antichrist. I think I had my
I
mind
agree.
changed on that by
thank
Ed
God.
maybe. But
Alex is worried because she was about to maybe change her vote.
no, listen, I'm still gonna vote. I say it all the time. Like I'm still gonna vote for him because who am I to deny prophecy? But yeah, of
course.
Also, I do think that there will be some more cheating. I just think if whatever's gonna happen, make it as hard as you can.
Yep.
And really just go out there and do whatever you feel like doing. But I don't think he's the Antichrist. I think that you know, the Book of Revelations, chapter 17 is talking about like the right hand man to this Antichrist figure, and he'll be a magician or I forget exactly the word that's used in the Bible, but it's like an advisor that's using some form of sorcery right next to the guy that's in charge, and that guy will be a world leader, something like a pope, like a religious world leader of a one world religion. So if we're talking about a magician that's right next to him, you'll see it in Lord of the Rings or Game of Thrones. There's always like that character that dabbles in dark magic, and he's like, tell them to do this. And the king's like, oh, do this, you know?
That's so
Same
true.
thing over and over.
Yep.
So I don't think Trump is the Antichrist, but it's possible that he could fill that role with, I mean, the idea of magician, MAGA, the way he's acting, you know, I'm not a Christian, this sort of like word magic that he's putting on people.
Have you ever
What
read?
did you think about that, Shane? When you heard that he's on stage and he goes, "My beautiful Christians, get out and vote. Get out and vote, Christians.
I've always-
This is the last time, I swear." And then he goes, "I'm not a Christian, but I love the Christians."
Let's do both those things. Which one will I start? Way back when he was asked about his favorite Bible verse, I mean, it was eye rolling because he didn't even have one. Right? It was pathetic. I never considered him a Christian. You know, I'm sure he believes, but I don't think he takes it as seriously or really like gives it much time. Although I wish he did. When he said that thing on stage about "I'm not a Christian," it was like the white dress, blue dress situation all over again, because there were some people who didn't think
That's
he said
what
that.
Top says. Top nailed it with that too. I agree with that wholeheartedly.
So what did you guys hear? Which version did you hear?
Well, I personally played it on my show Timeline Cleanse, and we slowed it down. And really, to me, the definitive thing was when he pulls when he says "I'm," he touches his chest, and then he says "nah," and he shakes his head no. And to me, the body language is what's the most telling, because it is like a blue dress, white dress type of situation, but he shakes his head no. And I know sometimes like you shake your head no, like that is, I don't know. I don't even know how you would do that. I can't make it happen right now. But I do think there are circumstances where you might shake your head no, but say yes. And it doesn't necessarily mean you're lying. But when it's in conjunction with what I hear is "I'm not," and then he shakes his head, it even looks like his mouth articulates that way. To people, I would recommend going back and listening to it on half speed and watching it.
What are they
saw it
saying
with
he's saying?
subtitles, and
If
it
it's
said
not.
"I'm a Christian," but then I did notice the no.
Alex, you were asking what he said. People
are saying
heard "I'm a Christian" or "I'm not a Christian," but there is a weird thing when people hear the "not," there is something weird. He's also just a horrible speaker. He
Yes.
almost never speaks in straight lines.
No, he does not.
And he's also a flailer. You know, when people always made fun of him they were like, he's making fun of retarded people. It's like, well, he's also that's how he speaks.
He confuses you, which is part of the magic, right?
Yeah, like that was the thing that with Brandon Straka, I forget the walk away guy, like
That's
that was
the magic.
right. So it's like, who's to know? I don't,
Confusing.
but I never considered him a Christian, you know, because
isn't there, I mean, he's literally at the Wailing Wall, wearing a yarmulke, kissing the wall. There is an integral tie-in with him in Israel, where there are many foundations within Israel that look at him as a messianic figure.
Right.
I know Top's reaching for it. I have the same one right here. This is our coin. We're going to be able to get into the third temple. That is Donald Trump's head next to their Messianic figure,
Wow.
King Cyrus.
Wow.
It says to fulfill 70 years, and he charged me to build him a house in Jerusalem. And so they've minted a coin. They've given him a silver crown as a group of rabbis who have given him a silver crown. I forget the significance of that. There's even articles written in 2018. I often have trouble finding it, but I think I've posted it. Donnie Darkin certainly posted it. If you go to his page and you type in David and Trump in the search bar, you will find an article written once upon a time, 2018 or 16, where there is a rabbi in Israel attempting to make a connection between the genetic lineage of the biblical King David and Donald Trump. There is a lot of Trump appreciation, let's just say. One of our favorite things to bring up is Super Trump.
I just read today, actually, about the King David. Man, I'm trying to find it. I was looking for it about 20 minutes ago. It seems like they did find a connection to him and King David, their bloodline.
It's
Somebody was posting about it. Yeah, when I do find it, I will post that again on Twitter.
How do they do it? Sorry, Raven, you go, and then I'll follow up later. I want to hear your point.
I was going to say about Super Trump, which is basically just the Israeli boys choir singing about Donald Trump, and the entire language of the song is he is a superhero. It goes beyond like Messianic figure, and it speaks much more to the sentiments of 2024, but it's literally called Super Trump, and they might as well be singing about an X-Men or an Avenger.
Well, I mean, you talk about trying to engineer a situation where someone looks Christ-like. We're talking about the attempt on his life. And for how many weeks, years leading up to, now, where people who are hardcore MAGA, like, they talk about him like he's Christ, which to me is like insane. Like, you just don't do that, and it's not right. But it falls in line. And once you build up someone in your mind as a caricature, whether it's out of love or hate, anything that happens to that person is going to become confirmation bias or whatever perception they have of them, which is what happens to all these people, which is why politics is a disease.
It's not good. And I do think this is a good point in the show to just remind the audience, who I'm sure to some degree, because a lot of people are won over by Trump. I said it earlier, and I know Top shares this sentiment. We like him. I like the dude.
Same.
Like, I really do. I liked his policies.
I was at a flea market today, and they had one of those like lawn sign cutouts, and I was this close to buying it and just putting it behind me.
Would have been hilarious. Oh my God, that would have been so funny. But, my thing is, I can like somebody, but also look at a mounting body of rather anecdotal evidence, although, it's strong, and go, well, that's weird. Why is that pile getting so big? Right. He is an integral center figure to the QAnon movement.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't think that QAnon is as bullshit as some people like to say it is. They call them Q-tards and things of that nature. That movement would never have been successful if there wasn't a tremendous amount of truth in it. People need to remember that at the height of QAnon, we were talking about Anthony Weiner's laptop. We were talking about emails with John Podesta and Hillary Clinton. We were talking about actual damning shit. I don't know if you remember when they got that laptop and the chief of police said that it was so horrifying what was on that laptop that they had to watch it in shifts, that his officers were throwing up and weeping or something of that nature. And I've been trying to find it. I was talking to Sam Tripoli about it. Tripoli remembers it, but you're real hard pressed to find the press conference where he said these things.
We're talking about Frazzle Drip, right?
Yes, essentially, yes. And I don't know if Frazzle Drip, I wouldn't say that Frazzle Drip's not real, but I do know that there was a time where there was a press conference and the chief of police was saying that his officers were weeping and couldn't. And
then they all ended up dead.
And then they all ended up dead, dude.
Yeah, it's weird. It's weird.
So,
I mean look, that stuff happens. The J6, all those police, not all of them, but a lot of those guys took their lives.
Well, I would argue, Shane, that when you say like nothing happens, I have a suspicion that nothing happens yet. It's not time in the script yet for this to happen. I think that there's a good chance a lot of the QAnon stuff will come to light and Trump will end up being vindicated on a lot of fronts. But what you really have to remember is that at the core of QAnon, it's Trump and the white hats are working to overthrow the deep state and the cabal. This is the core belief system of QAnon. QAnon would never have been so impactful if they weren't giving you a lot of truth. But I do think, Top and I say this all the time, the best deceptions remain as closely parallel to the truth as possible. They want to give you 9 truths to sell you the 10th lie. And the 10th lie is the most important one. And I think in this case, it's that Trump is a savior figure.
You reminded me of something, and Alex brought this up recently on a show, talking about theater and politics. Tom Hanks was the first actor to get COVID.
Tom Hanks was integrally tied into the QAnon.
We all forgot about Tom Hanks.
Yeah.
What happened to that guy? Is he in Gitmo?
Last I saw, I think he was bragging about Isaac Cappy dying or something like that in the desert. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Posting cryptid things in the desert in the same location.
Insane.
It was about roadkill.
Insane. And then what was the other thing? Oh, so I had friends who were deep into the Q stuff, and so I was getting it through them. And these are friends that like I deeply respect and super smart, and who have been listening, like to someone like Tripoli. So like 2 decades ago, like way long ago, before I was involved at all in anything. And, he was talking about like how they're talking about human trafficking and like how big it is. And then people would say to him or to me or just in general, the Q people, that's not happening. And I remember almost the day I heard that from someone, like, that's not happening. It was in Atlanta, Georgia, I believe, where they had like a container of all these kids, like 40 kids that were being trafficked. I'm like, no, that is happening. It's not ridiculous. Like, it's in the news right there. And it's local news. I like to trust local news sometimes,
There was a time during the Trump administration where quietly, without the biggest publicity, there were wins for the Trump administration for stopping giant child trafficking organizations, for locking people up and for saving children. This happened several times during his administration, and it would go
COVID.
And it would go pretty much undiscussed in the grand scheme of things, but you could find the articles. It certainly was happening, and I think that the timing of, to Top's point, COVID and sort of the height of this QAnon movement, because I don't really separate Epstein's Island from the QAnon movement, because they were talking about this before he got locked up. And people will say, oh, well, he was a known pedophile. He had been arrested for this before. Bill Gates decided to be homies with him after the fact. But so this isn't really a big surprise that he would be on their radar. There wasn't a lot of people talking about it. Alex Jones talked about it. The QAnon movement was talking about it. And sure enough, all of a sudden he gets arrested. It becomes this massive conspiracy. The meme of Epstein didn't kill himself reaches an unbelievable point of critical mass, and then the world gets shut down.
Yo, and remember, we kind of had a little bit of unity for like a day or two when people on the left and the right were both saying like Clintons are going to take this guy out before he died. Like they were like, we all were like, for sure he's going to die. And then he somewhat died. And it was weird because I was trying to write, I never did, but I was pitching stories about this former cop in New York who had been put in jail for supposedly murdering 4 Mexican dudes who were part of a cartel selling like coke and stuff. And I remember one of the days I pitched this to this one editor, it turned out to be the day that this same guy would be the person to beat up Jeffrey Epstein in the jail cell randomly. And then that's when everything went down. So I went back, everyone was turning down the story, and even afterwards it was nothing, like crickets. No one wanted to publish a story. And that's when I was trying to write for like the mainstream type spots when I still cared, and everyone was like, no, we don't care. I'm like, this is a crazy story. Are you sure? Like, you don't want to write about this? It's crazy. So I have a friend who's been writing about that as well recently. And because that was a major part. Like, if it wasn't for that guy supposedly beating up Epstein wouldn't have been put in that other spot where he supposedly took his life, right? And this guy, Nicholas Tartaglione, who's like a jacked muscle builder dude, he was given a cell phone in his cell. No one knew how that got there. So I have a friend who was talking to Nicholas Tartaglione from the prison. He's been in jail for all these years without a date. He's had no trial for the murder of those 4 men. That whole thing is crazy. But anyway, my friend who's a writer published some audio between them. He says he's innocent, which is something I never even imagined. I never would have thought like this guy's innocent, because you go and look up the story. I don't have to go through the whole thing, but it's an insane story. Like, for instance, just real quick, his accomplice, when they found out who the guys were who supposedly killed the immigrants that were then buried on this pig farm in New York, when they pulled over Tartaglione's supposed accomplice, the cop walked up to the car. Dude just took his life right there. It's insane stuff. Insane stuff. So anyway, I never would have even considered. What was that?
Is that the idea, Shane? Or are we touching on the idea that like this dude was pre-selected?
Yes, that's what I'm starting to think. Yes. And so
It sounds a lot like it.
he's been rotting in this jail for all this time in New York, which I know from friends who are NYPD, that they're like, that is like a really corrupt jail. And the person prosecuting him is Comey's daughter. So anyway, my friend gets in touch with him somehow. She's like got a huge Substack. This is a House and Habit on Substack. He's saying to her, I'm innocent. I'm like, that's crazy. I never even considered that. She publishes the audio. He disappears. After all these years, he's been taken from the jail in New York, where he's been since 2014 or 15, went to Oklahoma, but then he's gone. No one's heard from him. Crazy. So I'm like, yo, my friend's getting involved in some really crazy shit. So yeah, after hearing all that, I'm like, that's how I got the cell phone. He was always meant to be there. It wasn't like they just saw him there, like, we're going to use that guy. It's like, and he might not even know. He might not even know he was always put there. It's like, we're the engineers, these hidden ones, and we're going to create the scenario to then do the things we want to do. It's insane.
That's a great, see that right there though highlights this idea that like, I think we've kind of been lulled back into it, especially with the whole Trump assassination thing, as people are echoing that sentiment once again, that like, do you really think they would do this? Do you think that you could keep that many people quiet? Yada, yada. And it's like, dude, the things that we have kept quiet, the things that we've made go away, the way that we've engineered the culture and fine-tuned the propaganda machine so that you forget 48 hours after it happened. I mean, Top said it earlier. It feels like Trump was assassinated like a year ago, or, you know, attempted to be assassinated a year ago. It's just, everything's moving so fast. I think they have, if you think that they're paying the people that make the iPhone addicting, if you think they're paying them a lot, they are paying the engineers of the propaganda machine a king's ransom to create something that has entirely brainwashed us.
And imagine
we have the attention span of goldfish.
Right.
It gets me thinking, I mean, on like a separate subject, there's a book called He Came to Set the Captives Free. And it's about a woman that is a doctor in an emergency room, and she kind of stumbles upon a cult. And this is a true story, and it's a kind of a detail about how she battles it and what they do, their practices. But one of the things that they do is they work in maternity wards, practice like a coven of witches in a maternity ward, and some of them will take children's blood. I'm just wondering if these people who are doing these things down the line, is it like gematria? Is their name just like lined up with whatever the sun, so therefore they play this role? Or were they like always designated to play this role? Because was there some kind of a ritual at the beginning of their life, or at some point in their life, that they maybe know or don't know that they've consented to, and then eventually, you know, here comes
Didn't the fates in Greek mythology have like a string attached to everyone that was like their destiny
Silver
was already
cord.
right? Like, and I kind of think all that stuff was real and or is real, right? Like, those are the lower G gods. And some would say, I think even the fallen angels would be some of those, like Zeus, right? Like we were saying, like, I think that's possible. And then when you said the thing with the coven of witches, Top, I'm like, well, let's go back to the theater, the illusions of the world, and talk about Rosemary's Baby. That dude, Polanski, made a movie called Rosemary's Baby, and then was a part of one of the grisliest CIA murder crime scenes with the Manson stuff, you know? And when he was out, I think he was in London when the murders went down at the Tate LaBianca murders. He was telling someone about how crazy it would be about people getting murdered, you know, like, so it's like, I don't believe in coincidence. I think there are entities out there who are kind of like able to look at all the different outcomes and then manipulate it, whether it's the Tartaglione guy I'm telling you about, whether it's Trump, MAGA, all that stuff, whether it's just people at home, just your everyday murderer.
With Project Looking Glass is the idea that they have the ability to view potential outcomes, but that's very much a refinement of an old practice in mediumship, right? Where mediumship, I believe that there are people that have some sort of a gift and can see futures, but I think they're potential futures. I think that, you know, they can kind of see things play out if you do this or you do that. But it kind of brings me back to this point that we said before, right? Everybody got to the door and they think that it's the Jews, despite the fact that the door is covered in all this esoteric symbolism and the sigils of different gods.
Right.
And we had the same thing happen with Epstein. And it's the same thing that Top is talking about, where it's like everybody just thinks that the government is potentially involved in human trafficking.
Yep.
Maybe there are, kids being snatched. You hear horror stories of like nurses on their deathbed being like, I swapped out 2,000 babies in the maternity ward. Nightmare stuff, right? But for some reason, people stop there. Even with the Epstein thing, it's like, oh, well, he's being massaged with by 16-year-old girls. That's what the damage control that the Netflix documentary did, where it kind of absolved Ghislaine Maxwell and made it seem like Epstein was the mastermind of everything, and she was kind of a victim in many ways. And there was only teenage girls, but it gets much more horrifying than that. And especially when you consider that there was a temple with the owl, a golden owl of Minerva in it. And,
right.
And everything is done in a ritualistic fashion. Top's talking about a coven of witches that are trafficking children or doing whatever they're doing to children. It's like people keep stopping at what's tangible and leaving on the board the esoteric and the occult.
Mm-hmm. One of the examples given in that book was a child was born with a deformity, and the mother couldn't afford to pay for the surgery at the time to fix it. And the nurses were like, "Hey, we'll get together and pay for this. Well, just a vial of blood from your kid." And the mother's like, "Of course." And there you go. So I wonder how often that practice is done.
I think all the time. This is why I had a home birth. I'm not going to the hospital. Look, hospitals can be great, obviously. I'm not totally, but I'm pretty against, after having 2 kids in a hospital and seeing how they're kind of like tyrants with your babies.
Dude, I hate it.
It's crazy. We reject all the vaccines, or most of them, for the second one, because we didn't really know yet. The first has a few, and then they come in there and they're like, the third has none. They come in there and they're like, you need to give the kid this, and that. I'm like, what? Why? And then they look at you like you're crazy if you say no. I'm like, this is my kid. I'm like,
and then they look at you like, are you fit to be a parent?
Oh yeah, dude. They could literally report you.
My second during COVID, and at one point they actually took him out the room. And they were about to put vitamin K.
Yeah.
I don't know why it even needs that.
I know.
And it was like, where's the kid? Because we're tired. And I ran down and I was like, yo, stop that. I'm stopping cursing them. I'm like, don't fucking touch my kid. Mm-hmm. And they're like, oh, we're just gonna. Then after that, my wife's having trouble with the breastfeeding. Mm-hmm. The doctor comes in and we want to ask questions about breastfeeding, and they're like, it says here no vaccines. You're not gonna.
Yo.
And I'm like, what? And then they're just detailing what the vaccines do, and I'm just no, we're asking about breastfeeding right now, doctor. And they're like, oh, no. Yep. That doesn't, the baby doesn't have to eat.
It's you're not going to our main sponsor. It's a great product. It's a great product.
He obviously gets a kickback. Dude, it's crazy. So our first we did delayed for just a few, and then we learned by the second, we're just not doing anything. She has maybe one. And but they did the same thing both times. They come in and they're like, you can talk about anything. And we also had problems with breastfeeding at the first time. They put our son in the NICU, and I don't think he even had to go to the NICU. He was full term, but they were worried about jaundice, and he's in there for a week, and he's hooked up on wires.
I hate it.
Oh, dude, it was horrible. That really changed me, because that's the first time the only time I saw a child that had no skin. Because it was born so young, and I saw through the body and saw the blood pumping, and I'm like, oh my goodness, people want to murder this, in this world. They don't care. That was and that was 8 years ago. That was a big change for me. But at the end of that week, after all the horrors and the wires and the sounds, it's like a circle of hell. They let us go, and they're like, just put him in the window. He just needs some sunlight. I'm like, why did you make me stay here for a week and be absolute horrible?
In this bizarre prison where if I stand my ground too much, then you're going to look at me like I'm an unfit parent. Yep. And I feel like you can do something about that.
Yep, dude. So I learned, and then we also had a baby during COVID, and that's when they also, and I think you're still in New York, right? And I think we talked about that last time I was on your show. I learned at that point, we both learned these places are not for us. I've also seen hospitals kill people. I've seen a hospital legitimately I saw someone not wash their hands coming out of a C. diff patient's room and then touch my wife's grandfather, who then died of C. diff. And then I saw them, not similar, but it was kind of similar in Florida, something similar 2 weeks later with my grandfather. Our grandfathers died within 2 weeks of each other. Crazy time. So I spent a lot of time in hospitals. And then, having a child is beautiful. So it's like, it was beautiful and like amazing. I'm holding my kid for the first time, but it's so unnatural, and they want to cut you off from that miracle. It feels like in the hospitals, at least the ones I've dealt with, because they can't all be like that. And there have been nurses that were great, but I think about my grandma, when she gave birth to my mom, they just walked around and gave every mom pills to dry up their breast milk. And at that point they were saying, basically, they weren't saying this, but this was like kind of propaganda. Poor people breastfeed, and you're going to use formula. And you can, and so my grandma, that was like in the late 50s, early 60s. Everyone her age in her community, when she wound up in Florida, all took those pills, and no one thought any better. They're just like, sure, the doctor's saying to take it. Sounds good. We'll just do formula. That is just another way of the engineers of this horrible, hellish, false reality separating you from the divine. That is so, breastfeeding is incredibly important, I think. And it's crazy to me to think that not only will they walk in and give your kid all this stuff that they don't need, but then they'll turn off your mom's supply. What a crazy world.
These machines are like fine tuned to be to our detriment. You know, you look at like the whole Planned Parenthood thing and how they've managed to convince, I would expect through the feminism movement, they've convinced people to fight for this apparatus like it's for their own good. Never mind the fact that, Margaret Sanger, who is a known eugenicist, and I believe also a big fan of Hitler, if I'm not mistaken. There's some sort of correlation there.
I don't know that. Did she think he was based too?
I think she probably thought he was based. Yeah, she's like, I saw Europa. But, she was a eugenicist, and she wrote about her disdain for the black community. And now if you look at it, it's like the number one ethnicity that is using Planned Parenthood because they're always in low income areas, is the black community. And you go, and then you see people in the streets fighting for those buildings to stay open. And, if you talk to Top's always going off. It's like it's a mass baby sacrifice to Moloch.
Oh, absolutely. That's exactly how I feel. I think I was just going to ask you guys, like, are all these things, the mass human sacrifice, the baby sacrifice, the hate that is put in these silos to then blame people that could lead up to the consequence of mass murder, is this all part of their plan to create these fear rituals? Or they feed off the energy? Like, what is the goal?
Yeah, it's like they're looshing off human suffering. I think that's what so I think, the first commandment says, thou shalt take no gods before me. And it's super important. That's why he said it first. But what God really wants, God, uppercase G, God, is your worship, your adoration. He wants a relationship with you. And these small G gods, fallen angels, they want the same thing. But, if they can't get worship from you, they'll take your fear. I think these are like the idea of adrenochrome, or the idea of, I don't even know if I could say, I'm sorry, the idea of Monsters, Inc., that movie.
Yeah.
Harvesting fear.
That's right.
Right. So we had like adoration, worship, and fear kind of probably feed the same louche monsters. They want this thing. But your idea, what you were talking about, like having your kid at home, it's such a powerful thing to do. And if you can do it, I think you should. If I ever had another one, I would, because I often think about my son and my daughter as well. Like, they're brought into this world in this ungodly environment, this white room filled with people who don't care. There's machines beeping. Their mother might be drugged. My wife had a, what's that shot called?
Epidural.
Yeah, she had an epidural, so their mother's drugged up. It's a disaster. And then they put you in a room for 2 days to a week where it is even more of a disaster. There's other screaming babies. It's just a cold place.
Yep.
That's how my kid started his life.
Right.
And then during COVID, my kid continued his life with, not seeing the facial expression of people. The world completely shut down. No one able to come around him at all. Everyone's acting strange. What they did, I put a tweet out not too long ago, but what they did is unforgivable. And I like to joke around a lot, but when I say no amnesty, I mean it. And if I'm ever in a situation, or if I'm ever in the position to exact the revenge, which I probably shouldn't, because revenge should be left unto God, but these people deserve zero quarter.
Is this Top announcing his run for politics?
I am
Let's
running
go.
for president.
I often think too, it's like the way that they've fed this machine, this baby industry, is they manipulate women with fear. They use the propaganda machine. Every scene of childbirth is the most traumatic thing that any chick has ever sat down and watched in her life. By the time she is an adult and she's ready to have a child, she's very sure that she wants an epidural. She wants this to happen in the hospital. She wants painkillers. She wants this to be done with.
Yes.
It's amazing that they've removed the agency of motherhood from women who have been, by the way, birthing all the human beings in the world since the dawn of time. Yeah. And now we've been convinced that we need this medical apparatus to do it. But
not just that, like if it's taking too long in the hospital, they just be like,
they want that turnover rate.
Honestly, it's an assembly line. It's an assembly line. And now they want to plan, they want to plan the births more and more. Like that's becoming a popular thing, being like, well, just pick a date, we'll do a C-section, and then on top of that, we're going to have designer babies. I mean, they are just robbing you of any divinity, any god.
A designer baby is a particularly gay thing to call a baby. It's a terrible thing to call a baby. It's like designer baby.
Yeah. What do you think about that, Shane? That's like a political thing, right? Trump is saying that he's going to fund IDF.
Terrible.
IVF.
Terrible.
IVF.
I don't. Yeah. Well, that's a good Freudian slip too. I don't like it. I hate the idea of taking away the ability of people to have kids, but IVF to me it can be kind of that's its own little mass sacrifice. Yeah. If you don't have the money to afford to keep all the embryos going, which I don't think anyone does, unless you're a Kardashian, and they probably have a warehouse of embryos like that they eat. But I don't. I don't think that's good. I talked to someone recently she's on the left. She's a doctor. She works with the IVF stuff, and she's pretty liberal. And she was very outraged. And this is maybe a year ago, but this is. She was like, "This is terrible." They're like, "There's just all these basically children, these embryos in a warehouse that we just destroy." And that's a weird thing to. I'm not on board with it.
It is.
It's another one of those things that Trump is saying. I'm like, look, I'm still going to vote for him. There's so much I liked about his first term, but there's also a lot that he's done that I really don't like, and some of that stuff is the most important stuff. Like, okay, we can talk about lockdowns and whatnot. He did give it to the states, and the states fought over it. That's one thing. He did do warp speed. I hate that. But again, the argument would be he let the states, duke that one out. But the IVF stuff and him calling abortion like reproductive rights is like, oh man, now he just sounds like a leftist. So I don't know I don't think he's the Antichrist either. I think he's probably just surrounded by really bad yes men. Maybe they're not even yes men. They're above that. They are engineering his thoughts in ways that give us that produce really bad ideas. Because he also seems a little deflated. But yeah, when it comes to that stuff, I just don't dig it. But there's really important things I like to talk to him about that are only important to us and the people listening. Like I want to hear about John Trump and Tesla. He talks about his uncle. He's talking about John Trump at rallies. He knows about it. Like that stuff. I'm like, I mean, obviously that's not going to help out an election. It might help my vote. No, I'm going to vote for him anyway, but he's obviously connected to really big stuff, and he's super interesting and funny. But yeah, the IVF stuff is something I will not accept, and I think it's okay. I think Raven, I think you said this earlier. It's okay to want to vote for someone and not agree with all their stuff. But I will constantly always call out the things that I think are bad. I'm not going to all of a sudden accept certain things that go against my morals because the guy I'm voting for thinks it's cool. So we'll see. We'll see. It might help him get votes in the end, but my thing is I don't think it matters who's president. The way to fix the country is going to be spiritual, and it's going to happen from the ground level up. You're not going to Trump had all Republican House and Senate, and there was nothing done really in that first quarter, I guess, of his first term, however long it was. So it's like you can't rely on these people. You can't turn them into idols. You just got to work on yourself and your community and raise families. And, I'm against the idea of that, what you were saying, the little season. I did hear that recently because as parents, we have to have hope for the kids that they're going to inherit like a positive future. I mean, it's an evil world. You can be positive within it, and you can spread the positivity. So that's just where I'm at. I just tell my kids you're never going to get the Neuralink. And tell about human sacrifice. We haven't talked about fake clouds yet, but that's coming soon. We're homeschooling, so fake clouds, that's next semester.
Top said it before. He's like, these entities, they'll take your veneration. If they can't get that, they'll feed off your fear.
Yeah.
And if you look at the propaganda machine, it just kind of makes me wonder, like, we're talking about a mass sacrifice ritual, but are we also, because I said it earlier, it's like you are feeding something spiritually. We're detached from the spiritual realm in the West. We don't understand it, but it is real nonetheless. And most of our decision making feeds into some sort of spiritual aspect. And I just wonder, it's like when you plug into a propaganda machine, that seems to be the number one thing that they are trying to implement on your life is fear.
Yeah.
What are you feeding then? You know, these things are having a heyday. They're eating babies.
Yep.
They're siphoning off all this fear, this depression, this anxiety. I would say as a culture, you know, we've never been more anxious. More of us are on antidepressants and SSRIs than ever before. And I think that has gigantic spiritual ramifications. And I think the stronger these things get on the other side of the veil, the more they can affect what happens here. It's a vicious cycle. We're just feeding into it. And, you know, it's like every day we wake up to new man-made horrors beyond our comprehension. And I wonder sometimes if they're not so man-made, if they're just nudged by these things that are just, they're in the gym. Every time, you know, something happens with Israel and you know, Palestine or Iran and Russia and Ukraine, these things are just pumping iron in the gym, and they wake up the next day and they get back to it.
Yep. Yeah, go
Shane,
for it.
in the chat I'm reading, so someone named Iris said that they paid $700 a year at the IVF clinic to store their embryos.
Wow.
And it took this person a while to get pregnant. What happens, I haven't thought about this, but what happens when the state funds that? Do they own those embryos?
That's a great question.
Like, because
Do they reclaim them?
If they'll be destroying them. But if you think about the embryo, I've seen like videos of when they inject the sperm into the egg and you can see it, it'll go and then it'll just like, there's like a light. And it's like, oh shit, that's when like a spirit is made.
Right.
That's crazy.
Right.
There's a spirit in there, and it's you know, they cook it for a couple of weeks or something like that until it's good to go and plant. What are you doing with like thousands of spirits?
Well,
some women will create, you know, dozens of eggs, and the men will create millions of sperm.
I think they reclaim it.
Go ahead, Shane.
I think they reclaim it. I've thought that a lot of that stuff, the like aborted fetus stuff from Planned Parenthood, we know that certain labs at certain universities, I think one was in Pennsylvania, they took those things.
Trouble?
Yeah, and they were making like chimeras with these aborted. I think there's some of these like I think there are aborted fetuses out there that have been made that are probably living in a cage in some university lab that have ears growing all over its back, and they'll probably reclaim these embryos and do whatever.
Wasn't there an issue where Planned Parenthood was selling organs and such on the black market, and it was like, well, that wasn't representative of Planned Parenthood, that was representative of an employee, but there's nothing new under the sun. I think when it comes to this whole like alien thing, we talked about it a bunch of times. These things are not our technological homies from outer space. They are some product of the fallen and the Nephilim, and the agenda is the same thing. Their interests are in our genetics. L.A. Marzulli would call it the seed wars. You know, this idea that there's nothing new under the sun. The same thing that happened before the flood of Noah, where the offspring of the fallen and human women were doing all kinds of things, creating chimeric beings. It's where you get, in our opinion, the pantheon from, let's say, Egypt. You have a jackal head.
Cryptids.
Or cryptids, which, by the way, seem to be mostly sighted around military bases. Go figure.
Weird.
Yeah, very strange. And so I think when it comes to this alien phenomenon, there's a lot of different aspects to it. Some of it is governmental. Some of it is reverse engineered technology. Some of it doesn't even necessarily have to be reverse engineered technology. They're always light years ahead of us with what they haven't shown the public. And I think they could probably pass a lot of things off and probably do a lot and have us dismiss it as the UFO phenomena. That being said, I believe there is a tangible spiritual and physical aspect. There are entities that are taking people. And what are their interests? Their interests are always creating some sort of hybrid, grays, right? The black-eyed children, women having mysterious pregnancies that then go missing after they're confirmed in the doctor's office. Women then being abducted in the future and claiming to see children in their abduction experience that seem to somehow be their children, despite the fact that they're not the children that she has back at home. There's hundreds, if not thousands of those cases, and you could dismiss them as crazy people. But to me, it's like the patterns are too strong. It's the same thing time after time.
There will be a future where people can have like vanity surgeries to make themselves look half like a minotaur,
Yes.
Like head transplants are probably not that far away, honestly.
I saw
that video.
like a sort of a CG rendition where it was like, this is how we would do it.
Right. Yeah. That was that company's interesting. That's that fake company that also did the external womb video, I believe. They were talking about like wombs in a warehouse thing. But just because that's not real right now, at least as far as we know, doesn't mean that they're going to do that at some point down the road. I mean, one of the richest guys in the world is planning on putting a chip in your brain.
Right.
And right now it's not for vanity. They say it's for, helping paraplegics, helping the blind, helping the deaf. And that's hard to argue against. My problem is the future consequences of that, where it does become in vain. And people are like, I just kind of like, it's like the not like designer babies. Now it's you can redesign yourself. It's not just trans. It's like we can just
transhumanism.
Exactly. Exactly.
And that's the future. What my other problem with that is a long time ago, you could find videos from like the early 2000s. I don't know how old they would have been by that point, but it was like, look, we put a rudimentary microchip in this cat's brain, and all we do is stimulate the aggression centers of the brain and the sort. Yeah, and what you could do is you can make them hyper aggressive. And this was at the time the only two things that you could do. You can make them hyper aggressive, or you can make them incredibly docile with just a simple electrical signal to this microchip. So the idea that they wouldn't have the ability to access Neuralink and do whatever the hell they wanted to you, if you think that there's some validity right now to the idea that these shooters on SSRIs are actually some sort of MK Ultra victims or something of that nature, well, wait until you start getting them with Neuralink in their head. And all they did was send a little electrical signal, and the guy went apeshit. So, I mean,
and now we're all
speed to whoever the first one in line for that is.
There's definitely a lot of people on SSRIs walking around, but they're also low dosing us on psychotropics that's coming out of the sky. In my opinion.
Yes.
In my opinion.
Yes. It's in the water.
Dude.
That means it's in the clouds.
It's exactly. And that's why a lot of the illusion stuff, I think, works on a lot of people. I think a lot of us everyone, you can't avoid it. It's everywhere. As healthy as I try to eat, and I try to get my meat from the farmer down the road, and I steal eggs from Tim's Chicken City, there's still like nothing you can do to avoid the poison that's in the ground and in the sky. It's from everything. It's like it's not just the stuff that they're putting there to harm you and disease you and make you dumb. It's also just the stuff that's been there forever. And that is a tough thing to have to deal with in this world. And I keep seeing people, a lot of pilots get angry when I bring up the fake clouds thing, because they'll be like, chemtrails are actually contrails, and contrails evaporate. I'm like, contrails are a thing. I'm not saying it's not. Contrails are there. I'm saying there's also very long columns of diseased, poison-riddled clouds that they're putting up there that are raining down on you.
I'm telling you that I can walk out in the morning and see two X's across the sky, one next to another one. And when I come back later on in the day, those will have expanded into full clouds, and they'll be blotting out the sun for some reason.
Right.
But did you put the right glasses on?
That was the problem.
I'm trying to look out the window right now. See, the clouds are looking pretty fake out the window right now. I need to get a cloud cam. In the studio.
Okay.
Because I want to talk about the hologram clouds. There's lots of clouds we should talk to.
Dude, that's what you need. Inverted World Live needs a cloud cam.
Yeah,
you need to be able to go to the cloud cam at least once an episode when it starts and after the episode.
Yeah.
You go, look how much it expanded in the time that it took.
Tim Pool, if you can have a Chicken City camera, I can have a cloud cam.
Okay.
I'm going to talk to him about it. I'm going to write that note down. Cloud cam.
The idea of the clouds, it's super pertinent to what we're talking about, especially when you're talking biblically, because in the end days they said it'll be like the times of Noah, or the days of Noah. And in the days of Noah, God was like, it's out of control. Like, I can't help you guys anymore. They have taken over everything. And I think when he says that, or when he's saying that like things are just really bad, I think they're talking about GMO foods. I think they're talking about vaccines or whatever they were putting into people to genetically manipulate them, and possibly just stuff in the sky. Right. Like the way the plants are growing differently because of how it's being rained on. So this is like barely even God's creation. And we're living in such a fallen world right now where I'm looking around and I'm like, yeah, dude, I don't know how you fix this.
Right. It's so, when I say we live in a simulation, I don't mean ones and zeros. I know I've told you guys this before, but for those who haven't heard, I don't believe we live in a zeros and ones simulation. I believe the engineers of the false reality made everyone think that we live in this fake world when base reality, God's reality, is still there. But then that's not just like a perception thing, because it's also organic thing. When I was in New York looking out in my backyard one day, many years ago, I was just kind of nerding out on tree species and plants. And all of them were invasive. They weren't even from here. So what I was looking at, it's not natural to that part of New York. It's not even natural to America. A lot of it's from China, you name it. It's just, so I'm looking at it completely actual. It looks organic, but that's a simulation, because it's none of that belongs here. It wound up here from some crate, on a ship that came, to Ellis Island or something. Who knows? So they've been building this false world for hundreds of years, or since the fall of man. Let's say thousands. It's been going on. The bad people have been trying to manipulate your idea of the world and sever you from God since we left the garden. And it's funny, even now thinking of the garden, thinking of the way the gardens look now, everything's fake. Everything. The way you perceive history, the way you perceive yourself. People can be whatever they want. You can take certain pills that make you basically defeat death until the very end. We got people walk around like zombies. Yeah, it does seem like it's the end times, but then I always think it's almost like it's always been the end of the world, and we're always inheriting the end of the world, and it's just that's why I keep coming back to it. It's just up to you to being like a light through the darkness, for your kids especially.
That's true. I think that too. It's it's really bad now, but it was probably really bad before, and we go through these phases. It's just now it feels kind of different.
It's really, it's really bad now because we are actually questioning, not we, but the world has made it okay to question the very nature of your existence, and is also promoting the death of the innocence of children. That is so someone listening could be like, well, they've been sacrificing children forever. True. But we are kind of making it so we're sacrificing the kids, but keeping them alive, which is really bizarre.
I do want to say though, because it's I know we've turned a corner. I sensed it the past 10 minutes. It's this became very black pilling, and that is not the message that I like to give people. I know you guys don't like to give people that either, but it's there is good news. The good news is you can have a family, do your best to maintain the health and the education of your family. You can develop a connection with the land that you live on and develop a relationship with God. You can detach from this, because the truth of the matter is, if you detach from the overwhelming fear porn propaganda machine, the birds are chirping outside. Top has a beautiful property. They are fake. Well, they're robots.
True that. True.
Clouds are beautiful, fake.
But they're fake, yes. But
sun,
Top can walk out into his yard in his bare feet, put his feet in the grass, watch his kids play, and go in and teach them about God and do something meaningful. This isn't, I don't like to black pill people. It's just you have to realize that, going back to what I said, I kind of believe culture is poison. I don't believe we've had a genuine culture that has not been co-opted and manufactured by an intelligence agency for a long time. Certainly not within our own lifetime.
If ever.
It's you can have your own culture. You can read the Bible. You can get closer to God. You can nurture your family. You can raise your children. You can have a wonderful relationship with your wife, and you can really detach from all of this shit. I don't think you can stop. What I will say is I don't think you can stop whatever this is. I don't think it's time yet. Whenever that time is in the story, because I do think that we are living out a story, I think we'll know. But for now, it's really look inward. It's Owen Benjamin says this. He's got this line of it's
every time you say Owen Benjamin.
Yeah, every time you say Owen, but he says it's about the Jew in your own heart, right? If you really think that the Jews are out there and they're pulling the strings and all this terrible stuff has happened, what about you?
Right.
What about your accountability? What about your decision to engage in the predatory loans and the faulty financial system? What about your decisions to turn on the pornography? What about your decisions to drink the alcohol? What about your decision to plug into the propaganda machine? What about your decision to eat the terrible food? If there really is all this apparatus that's encroaching upon you and trying to poison you this way psychologically and that way, health wise, what about your decision to partake in it? It is all about your consent. You can choose to stop consenting to all these bullshit systems, and you could build something better for yourself. It's a little bit harder. I was talking the other day on my show about how, a terrible thing is happening. It's like the public school system does terrible things to your kid. The financial system demands that the two parents work oftentimes. And, next thing you know, because you as a husband have stopped trying, your wife has become disenchanted with you. Now there's a divorce on the table. Now your kid is being raised by a woman who's in work most of the time.
Yep.
All of a sudden the internet's raising him. He's trans. All this crazy shit is happening. And it's like, there's two different hards. You can choose that hard, or you can work hard to be a good husband, a good wife, a good father, a good partner, a good member of your community. And you can build something instead of letting these systems that, they are at your doorstep. They want in, but when they knock, you have to answer.
Yep. I think a lot of people need to remember and embrace the idea of legacy and shedding your own ego. Like, you're not going to live forever. A lot of people are so plugged into the idea of materialism and down to their own body, and they can change all these things and put the brain chip in and all this stuff. They can have their designer babies or whatever. How they define their wealth by the things they own, their social media presence. But nothing completes me more than just being with my kids, my family. It's a real I'm okay to die type feeling. This is the work of art. These kids are going to do the thing now, and I'm so glad I got to meet them, and nothing else matters. And that gives me an incredible peace. I love that. And I think this weird promotion of having no kids, it's really turned off progress in the good sense. Like I was saying earlier, the idea of legacy. We don't build cool things. We don't make cool things. There's no room to even make a cool culture. I think there could be a possibility for culture. I think it could happen in small pockets, growing up in Hudson Valley, New York, and being part of the hardcore punk scene and the bands there, DIY. That was some of the most exciting times of my life. And those shows, a good show for us is wow, 20 people were there, or 100. That was amazing. But it didn't matter how many people were there. It was we got to get together and just do our thing. And it was cool and it was fun. We were making something. And it seems like that idea of just making something for fun is gone. And that's why I'm kind of I'm over the idea of AI art.
Because humor is lost.
Humor is also lost. But I think it's going to come back. I also reject the black pill. I hope people don't walk away with thinking this is a black pill. I think it's good to understand the evil that's out there and really confront it. Because and I think I said this on your guys' show last time I was on with my cardigan, is I reject nihilism, and you have to just, COVID was a blessing. COVID was incredible because it showed everyone, not everyone, but a lot of people, this is what they're willing to do to you, and they're going to destroy you. They actually love destroying you, and you guys were saying, they feed off of it. It made me and my wife better parents, I think. It woke us up to a lot of other stuff. I thought, I was into a lot of conspiracy stuff, I thought I was in high school and college and stuff, but that was baby conspiracy stuff. I wasn't really plugged in at all. But that, I think, Raven, you said it earlier, it confirmed, COVID and lockdowns confirmed all the evil things I thought I knew about our system in place. But now it's happening to me, and I was a father, and I had to confront it. And instead of doing things that my neighbors were doing in New York, which was putting on the masks and getting the shots, and not allowing my kid to play with my kid or all that stuff. I lost a lot of friends. I was nah, we're going to live our life and still have hope and joy and love and move forward. And I'm glad. But before we go, where can people find you guys? Where's Nephilim Death Squad, and where are you guys on social media to give people more of this positivity?
Well, before we get into that, I do want to say we are throwing an event in October. Right. October 25th through the 26th is the second happening of Bohemian Grove, and it's a 2-day long conspiracy, comedy, and political event. We're going to have Nephilim Death Squad, Tower Gang, Leonardo Joni, Revenge of the Sis is coming, Jay Dyer is coming,
Sick.
Josie the Redheaded Libertarian, Clint Russell, Juan of the One-on-One Podcast Chain. It's a whole bunch of people. It's going to be a blast. We're doing live.
Possibly me.
Yes,
Possibly
yes.
me.
I hope you can make it.
I'm
really
working
hope
on
you
it.
can make it if you can.
God,
It's awesome.
But yeah, it's a crazy lineup. I didn't know Jay was there
ridiculous
too.
event.
That's sick. Jay's awesome.
Yeah. Yes, I love Jay Dyer. He's coming. He wants to do what's called cringe core. So he wants to do a musical number, which is hilarious. And so I hope that happens. But like I said, 2 days of live podcast, stand-up comedy, and music. There's also going to be merch and drinks and food and all kinds of stuff. So if you guys want tickets to that, it's October 25th through the 26th in Summerfield, Florida at the Joke Joint. Nephilim Death Squad presents Bohemian Grove. You got to go first to our Patreon, patreon.com/Nephilim Death Squad to gain early access to the tickets. It's a small venue, so it's going to sell out fast. We want our patrons to have first access to it. So Nephilim Death Squad, I'm sorry, patreon.com/Nephilim Death Squad.
And
Other than that,
you guys, real quick before you do that, you guys put out a video of the last one that Tripoli had. That video is amazing.
yeah, it was so much, dude.
It was
Wow.
It was so much fun. It was so much fun. It was insane that the first one was headlined by Sam Tripoli.
Shout out to Sam.
I love Sam Tripoli. He's one of the realest dudes.
Did you
But
guys bring Sam and Owen together yet?
No.
Can we work on that?
I don't know.
I'd like to work on that. I know that was a lot of beef, but I hate seeing everyone fight.
I don't like it. I wish it would
They do
stop.
this. They do this like every 2 years.
Do they?
We're gonna figure it out.
I hope so. If anyone can do it, it'd be you guys.
But you can find Nephilim Death Squad on Rumble and YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. We prefer Rumble, though. It's the free speech platform. Also, find us on Nephilim D Squad on Twitter and Instagram. And you can find me at David L. Corbo on Twitter.
Sick.
You can find me. Actually, you know what? I wanted to just address something. You were talking about the concept again of the Garden of Eden. I feel like that's the name of this episode here. The Garden of Eden is the idea of time preference. And this seems to come up all the time now. You can be like gods right now. You can have your designer baby. You can have your plastic surgery. You can do whatever you want. That's right here for you. Or you can barter and choose eternity, because that's what the Garden of Eden is. And when you have kids, when you cultivate your own land, when you do anything that's growing or creating, you're choosing eternity. You're planting a seed. That's why I love the creative so much. I know that you love creative people too, because they're putting something there that will last longer than them. They're building a statue. It's just beautiful. That thing will be seen for years. Or even building something that they will never see finished, you know? So I think that's the end of this, the message of this show. It's like, choose eternity. And for us, that means Jesus Christ, God and Jesus Christ. I hope people go look at it. I'm not trying to push people the wrong way or whatever, people get offended, but that's what it is for me.
Same.
So you could be black-pilled or you could choose eternity.
Well put. I love it.
Yeah, my name's Top Lobster. You could find me at toplobster.com. You could buy racist t-shirts. I do another racist show called Tower Gang, where we talk about, if you've never heard of endless shrimp and that phenomenon, that's like a racism / economics. You name it, man. We were talking about it on there. Nephilim Death Squad, of course.
What time and day can people watch Tower Gang?
9:11 p.m. EST every Wednesday, baby boy. We're there.
That's right.
We're going to be doing some wild stuff. But yeah, that's all my plugs, man. I hope you follow me, especially on Twitter. That's where I want to talk to you at. I don't care about this other stuff. Talk to me on Twitter.
Please, everyone listening, if you don't already, I suspect many do, follow these guys, watch their show. It's incredible. I've been on it, I think, twice. And it's always a blast. And thank you guys so much for joining me tonight. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having us, brother.
Shane.
Yep. Peace, guys. Amazing. It's good to be back.
Yeah, it's great.
They were great. Love having them back. Anything with you going on crazy? You got any ghosts you got to clear out? Any weird visitations we should?
No, I like what these guys are saying. At the same time, I just feel like I'm in the camp of everyone just needs to make the best decision for themselves.
Yeah.
You want to have a baby in the hospital? Do it.
Yeah.
You don't want to have a baby?
Oh yeah.
Don't do it.
Yeah, especially like if you're like high risk stuff for sure. Like I'm not going to judge on that. Just don't do the things that are evil.
Well, there's a lot of
Don't do those evil things.
But you have all the information at your hands.
Yeah.
So
You would hope people actually read it though.
that's true. And if they don't, then that's no
It's
one's
crazy.
problem but their own.
It's crazy. That was a good PSA though.
Okay, thanks.
On the way here, I almost hit a vulture.
You did?
Yeah, it was crazy.
There's always something.
I thought that was like a
I
weird
get
omen.
scared driving here. I always think
Yeah.
like the worst things.
I was worried that meant something was going to go like terribly wrong.
Yeah.
Did the show actually go out?
It's
They
not
said
live
there.
ever. No,
That's
just
amazing.
never
Well, it's good to be back, and I'm glad
Yes.
we're glad we're here. Where can
Definitely.
people find you?
I am Alex Ayala on Twitter, but I think Twitter is evil.
What?
So it's part of the problem. So
No
anyway,
way.
you can find me there, but you're not really going to find me there.
Yeah, you're there like sparsely.
Exactly.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for joining us. We will be back next Sunday. Can't wait. You can find me at Shane Cashman everywhere. And if you have stories you want to tell, we had someone tonight who we had to reschedule last minute, which is a bummer because this person's got some pretty wild stories. So wasn't able to get anyone else in their place so last minute. But if you do want to tell us stories and call in, you can send me those ideas at shanecashman@scanner.com, SCNR.com. All right, guys, we'll see you next time.